Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm doing an episode today to talk about your best macronutrient ratio for you to eat based on your own bio-individuality using genetic reports, metabolic typing, and looking at possibly your microbiome, as with biome and other lab testing we do as FDN practitioners to help figure out the best stress protocol for you to optimize your health from the inside out. So the DRESS protocol stands for diet, R is rest, E exercise, S stress, and another S is supplementation. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about what metabolic typing is about and looking at genetic reports, as most of all of you, I think, have done 23andMe at one time, or maybe it's Ancestry DNA, and just looked at who your relatives are. So I want to start with that and then go into what metabolic typing diet is that we learned with Paul Chek and that we use a metabolic or a FDN practitioner program, and Dr. McCullough used to suggest using it, and just kind of going over that. Everybody's different. There is no one size fits all. How many carbs, protein, and fats that your body needs to feel energized. You should be full and satisfied and feel happy and not have any cravings. So if we eat wrong for metabolic type, you may find yourself overeating or feeling inflammation from eating foods that are not good for your body. So there's a whole list of things that are related to having foods that you react to and having foods that irritate your gut wall lining, cause or contribute to your metabolic chaos and permeable gut wall lining or leaky gut, microbiome issues, and all that kind of leads to all sorts of different health issues as particles fall through the cracks of our gut wall lining and we don't have our full army, our defense team, lined up around our gut to protect what goes in and out of the gut wall lining. So we want to have a strong immune system, have our secretory GA antigens there ready to be our defense team, and not have maldigested food particles, antigens, bacteria, parasites, other bad pathogens that can seep through the gut wall lining or diffuse through too big of porous holes in our villi, microvilli that surround the lining of our gut. So the mucosal lining of our gut is really what we need to keep strong, healthy, and intact. So a lot of that is eating foods that are good for your body, that are not going to be irritants to that gut wall lining. And things that seep through, as I started to say, get tagged as enemies. So something that could be really good for you and a healthy fat, healthy protein, could also be an enemy of yours if you become reactive to it, if your body tags that as an enemy and will attack it if you have it. So we want to look at, a food sensitivity lab, a gut pathogen lab, leaky gut panel, metabolic assessment, and a hormone balance. We do 5 main labs in the FDN program with clients. But then I'm into looking at your genetics. So go into your 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, and I just am pulling up mine. So you look on Ancestry. I'm on 23andMe. So if I look up Ancestry on the top tab, that will show me an overview of my ancestry composition. And if we want to look at our ancestry background, we can use that information to figure out where's my heritage from, my ancestors, what foods are best for my body based on my ancestry background. So my background in here says 64.2% British Irish, so Northern European. I'm actually 14.7% French and German and 4.8% Scandinavian. So And then it says, get to know your relatives. They're 40% less likely to be vegetarians, and 100% of my relatives have British and Irish ancestry. So I would use that information to figure out what foods my body likes. So I know when I did Ben Greenfield's Keon coaching program, we would look it up and say, Northern European, what I need to eat. So you can look at your ancestry DNA and foods to eat, something like that. And you can look up ancestralhealth.com. Health can give you information. There's Mark's Daily Apple. He did an article years ago to figure out, all right, well, here's where I'm from. What does that mean for determining the optimal diet for me based on my background? So that is part of what you can get from genetics. Also, we'll go into different gene mutations. And I did a great podcast recently with Dr. Rosenberg on MTHR and all sorts of genetic markers that you can get from here. So if you look up a definite guide to using your recent ancestry to determine your optimal diet, is a great article, as well as others. And then you can figure out what best foods. I'm more protein and fats based on more Northern European food. And you can get a lot of that from, I'll find some other articles and put in the show notes, but figuring out which one's based on your background. So if I want to look up more my ancestry DNA and foods to eat, that's what I'm looking at. I don't need to know that I have 50 relatives that are somehow connected to me. So then I go back to 23andMe, health and traits. So if I look at the overview, click on that. And then I can look at all my reports and action plan I can set up. But really I'm looking at the wellness reports here. So I'm looking at wellness reports. Click on there. It gives me alcohol flush reaction, caffeine consumption, deep sleep, my genetic weight, lactose intolerant, muscle composition, saturated fat and weight issues, and sleep movement. Now, I think they would add some along the way because I'll get emails from them. So then there's somewhere on here, and you can go to that search button in the top right and look up raw data. So it says download your raw data. So you can click on that 23andMe. So then it gives you just instructions how to download your own raw data so you can have access to all the information that they got. So you don't need to retest, maybe just if you want to know if it's really different or not. So then you go to DNAFit.com is one program I've used. So you can upload your raw data into DNAFit. And I really like it. It's out of the UK. There is testing kits you can get from the US that they can use their data. But they have a great website, and I did their coaching program a year ago, and I found it really excellent way to look at your fitness genetics and your nutrition genetics. They also have a new one I'm supposed to buy, Muscle Builder, genetically guided guide training, fat burner, meal planning. They had a new stress one, but I don't see that on here. So we look at, say, let's explore my nutrition genetics. And this is why I have all my clients that I'm doing health coaching with add this into our program, because we want to look at the metabolic typing diet, mtdiet.com, and look at what that review says, and then look at a DNAFit or one of these other reports. We also have, if I type in Dr. Ben Lynch, his Dirty Genes has, I think it's Strategene. Dr. Ben Lynch. I love that book. You must read it. Dr. Ben Lynch, Strategene, Stratagene. And then I can look up his program and I can upload my raw data into that program. So Strategene is a great way to look at what your genetic markers are. Now I can log in and see what I've done, but I can't find where the program is, but somewhere on here it has my results and I can get my report. So I did that. It is, I forget how much that one is. So I can enter in there and get another report. And I just like to see what everything is and compare it all and put it all together. All right, so going back to DNAFit, I want to look at my nutrition report. So how to use this report gives you directions. Carbohydrate sensitivity, I have a high response. So then I can click on open results. And then it says, let's discover how your genes influence your response to refined carbohydrates. Now, I know I'm horrible with carbohydrates. They cause me to overeat and not be full and satisfied. So this just reinforces my own experience with carbohydrates. They can be a crack to me if you give me some good fresh bread and olive oil or a bag of tortilla chips. I will overeat. So I just know foods don't have them because they don't work for me, and I'll feel like crap afterwards and be hungry an hour later. Just wasted a lot of calories that did nothing. So a body's response to refined carbohydrate intakes differs from person to person, and that's what we'll get to in a next episode of talk about this part 2 about the metabolic typing diet, that we have slow oxidizers and fast oxidizers, because I know I do better with fat and protein, not with carbohydrates. So I know some people can then tolerate carbohydrates, so they can be lean and strong and great endurance, but they can still balance their blood sugar by eating a little more carbohydrates than myself. The other hand, I think a lot of us are damaged, as myself, from eating the wrong foods that we were told with the political nutrition, people funding all this research and changing the results, like Ansel Keys and the food pyramid founders and all the politicians involved in this billion-dollar companies to get us to eat crappy foods that make us feel more hungry. So I think a lot of us got metabolically damaged from years of being afraid of eating healthy fat and the whole fat phobia and counting our calories and not looking at our blood sugar regulation and ketones for being fat adapted. So we have a genetic inheritance though, right? So we're looking at these genes to figure out, all right, I'm going to be bio-individual because I'm not the same as my friend next to me. So there's ancestral diets that we're looking at. There's not one diet that is right or healthy for everyone. There's no good or bad foods unless they're crappy and processed, but talking about real foods, it depends on your metabolic individuality and your requirements based on your genetics. So that's that various metabolic and genetic nutritional requirements help define those people, what their metabolic type is. And that's what they talk about in our FDN program, Paul Chek's program I've done. The metabolic typing diet was created by William Wolcott. And years ago, I got to find it, I did a podcast with him. So back to DNAFit, you can learn so much interesting information. I just like the layout of it. So we've got the carbohydrates, and they take, 5 genetic markers, and my genotype and the effect on that. So that means, like if I have genes from my mother and father, both, so it creates, say, the ACE gene, and my genotype is DD, that means full effect because I have both genetic D and D from both parents. But the part PARG gene is, I'm a CC, so that's full effect. And then I have a combined one genotype, a C and a T, so that's partial effect. And so what you can do on here is what I did when I was learning all this is click on what that gene means. So the ACE gene is a converting angiotensin 1 converting enzyme. That's a small enzyme that plays an important role in blood pressure, regulation, electrolyte balance. And it goes on and explains it all. If you want to know, the PARG gene is found in the nucleus and important in the formation and development of fat cells, and the nuclear receptor, which certain molecules bind to it as prostaglandins, can itself bind directly to our DNA and influence expression of specific genes. So blah, 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 it goes on and on, but it really tells you your ability to regulate fatty acid storage and glucose metabolism. And the SNPs that they test change the amino acids position well, it goes on. You don't need to know that. But anyways, the CC or your CG or your GG. So that explains what all that means if you want to learn the why and how that comes out to be what your body based on your genetic needs. So then we've got the TCF7L2, and that's a one that will tell you the expression of genes and the amount of various proteins produced, affecting the variety of genes. The protein involved protein, but it's been implicated in blood glucose homeostasis, and so you can read all about that. And anyways, so that's how it works on DNAFit. So my carbohydrates, I'm looking there. My results, I go back to that, and I want to see what my other dashboards are. So the carbohydrate sensitivity, though, I rate high. So I'm very highly sensitive to carbohydrates, and that's the second highest score bracket for this response because it's a very high. So I'm at the high end. This gene in this panel impact the way I metabolize and assimilate refined carbohydrates and affect the combined effect on my variants that they showed, the 5 different ones, puts me in a slightly increased effect, making it more of an issue for me to deal with carbohydrates than other people. When all this equal, this score would mean your genotype creates an increased impact on short-term glucose fluctuations and longer-term insulin sensitivity as compared to those with lower scores. So they're suggesting that I need to lower my refined carbohydrates intake than other people, which I'm sure there's a lot of other people like this. So controlling your blood sugars, we talk about all the time, impacts your insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes, cardiac disease, because blood sugar high will cause the stickiness on your cells, like jar of jam on the outside gets all sticky. That's what your cells get to be like. You stay full for longer time and you reduce those sweet cravings. So that's a big one I think you'd like to know if you don't know already. And then we can go on to my other nutrition reports. Saturated fat sensitivity. I have a medium response, and that will tell you a lot of information of, do I need to limit the amount of saturated fats? And that's based on, so I'm kind of in the middle of the road. That's a whole bunch of different genetic markers. So there's over 10 different ones that they put together to see my risk for having saturated fat. So again, it's not good or bad, but to have saturated fat, as we know, but it's the amount we have. So maybe not as much saturated fat for my body, but I'm not as highly ranked. So I'm come out to be middle of the road. So I'm not a very low risk, but I'm kind of somewhat need to be cautious of having excessive saturated fat based on my genetic markers. So there'll be a lot of information if you'd like to know why. As me, they have research articles. You can click on here, the research behind saturated fat sensitivity. And that gives you a lot of great information in their research they have conducted to have the association between fat intake, physical activity, mortality, depending on the variations of your genetic markers. And you can get tons of info there. So the other nutrition markers, you can click on my dashboard. And the other ones I already went over: carbohydrate sensitivity, saturated fat sensitivity, medium response for me, detoxification ability. And that just goes through not so much your phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathways that I've talked about recently, but also your reduced ability to deal with a char-grilled meat and what it says about your ability to get rid of that. So you don't want, burnt bacon and having your meat so char-grilled. So it gives you information on that. And that's probably, are you able to detoxify those excess toxins you're taking in, those carcinogenic foods that you burn your food? It's not good for you, especially if you have a congested liver, which we test in my FDN program I'll do with clients. The other one here we find out is my need for antioxidants. We also do the metabolic assessment test that I just said measures your detoxification ability, as well as looking at these genetic markers. But we can see in lab testing how your oxidative stress is and how congested your liver is. Then also we have their need for omega-3. I have a normal need. Some people have a little higher need. The antioxidants, I do have a raised need The B vitamin, methyl B, and folate, I have a raised need for that. Vitamin D, normal, but I think everyone, especially in the Northwest and northern countries, states, we need to have a lot more vitamin D in the winter. We have a lack of daylight. I can't even imagine living in Alaska, by the way. I need my sunshine. So vitamin D supplementation, I'm normal, but I still need some more, especially this time of year. And doing lab work too, blood work will tell you if you're low or high. Alcohol sensitivity, I have a positive response, so that explains that. Caffeine sensitivity, I'm a fast metabolizer. Salt sensitivity, and my predisposition for celiac is on here. Lactose intolerant, I'm likely to be low, and then, excuse me, my gene summary is on here as well. So it's kind of fun to dive in. And then as a health coach and health detective, or you can be your own detective for your own program, is looking at, all right, well, here's what this says. Then I go to DNAFit, 23andMe, and see if I get any extra info there. Usually I got it all. And then I look at Strategene, and I really dive deeper into my issues with healing from chronic stress issues and looking at why am I taking longer to heal than others. So I have increased tolerance to stressors. I need an extra dose of glutathione and methyl B vitamins, and I found out I needed more folate and all, which is in the methyl B complex, but the B12 and all that. So you can learn a lot if you find a coach to help you. Seekinghealth.com is Dr. Ben Lynch's website. And then we've got, as I said, the DNAFit, or other ones that are out there in the US. I know there's more coming, but I find it's interesting. So you can also, Palette is another one, program that does all this. I haven't used it. I just have used DNAFit, so I don't get any commission from them. I just liked the way it's laid out. And Perfect Diet is really using your DNA and taking that with your Keto Mojo blood sugar testing, and then looking at your metabolic typing program to learn more. So we'll put that all together. I'll talk about what metabolic typing is. I find it, I'm curious about my results. There's a huge questionnaire to do that really you need to do with your spouse or someone that knows you, because I'm always answering going, well, maybe yes, maybe no. I'm kind of both, and so it's hard to answer a lot of the questions. But finding what metabolic type you are helps you based on your different questions they ask. Are you a fuel mixture to be a fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer? So what type of fuel you'll need to keep full and satisfied and energized depends on you. So the ratios may be different. So a lot of it is making sure we're getting the right fuel source, looking at your metabolic individuality or your genetic requirements combined with that, as well as your MRT or another food sensitivity test, that you can figure out the best food plan for you. And then add on blood sugar testing, make sure your blood sugar is between 70 and 90, or ideally, right around 80, 90. And you're showing some ketones, like 0.5, 0.1 even, for those that are just not in strict nutritional ketosis for health reasons, but just to be good at burning fat and not sugar, glucose dependent, that we are becoming more aware of our fat burning engines and working on our performance and longevity. Really looking at longevity is what I'm curious about. The mitochondria function and how this works together with our energy coming from our mitochondria and eating the right food and metabolizing your food correctly with proper digestion, proper gut nutrient health, and liver function, and more. So I've got some new ebooks on the website, wpotts.net, you can download, and one's on liver, some on chronic stress, and then I just put a new one on how to train the whole athlete from the inside out. So take advantage of those, because they're like the one I just put out is 80 pages, and I have a great editor and makes them look pretty and colorful pages. So you don't want to print them out, you just want to have them on your iPad or whatever device you use to read while you're on the plane or something. Traveling, want to read some great informative articles that you probably already know a lot of it, but sometimes you just learn a few things new that makes you go, aha, now I get it. So let's talk next about the metabolic typing diet a little more and what Bill Wolcott taught us years ago, and how every food and nutrient has a stimulatory or inhibitory effect on one side or other of one or more of the fundamental homeostatic controls. That's what he talks about in his metabolic typing diet. So he's really talking about what we learn in FDN is the ultimate effect of a food or a nutrient on the body is not dependent on intrinsic value of the food or nutrient itself. The ultimate effect of what we eat depends on the impact of the food or nutrient on the fundamental homeostatic controls, as if that food stimulates you or sedates you. Is it acidifying or alkalizing? So everything we talk about, we always say, or I always say, the Goldilocks effect, and having that right balance in all the body systems. And that seems with the metabolic typing, what Dr. Wolcott looks at sympathetic dominance versus parasympathetic dominance. We want to be in between. Are you a fast oxidizer or slow oxidizer? How do you burn fuel as your main engine? And how to tweak that and fine tune it based on your body type and your genetics, as we're talking about, but really bring you into balance based on where you are. So for the teeter-totter kind of angles one to the other, we want to bring you back into balance. Parasympathetic or sympathetic, it's not one or the other. We want to be kind of in between the two. Just like when we test our heart rate variability, we don't want to be one or the other, but we want to have resiliency and everything to be back and forth. So it's not ever anything's good or bad. It's just a proper balance and finding that Goldilocks effect. So the sympathetic dominance versus parasympathetic dominance, I'm going to go in next time. The physical tendencies and the physical tendencies, and then look at the energy and what you can eat based on your metabolic typing report. So if you're a fast oxidizer, you require a slow burning fuel mixture, higher percentage of protein and fat, versus if you're slow oxidizer, alkaline based, you're requiring a fuel mixture with higher percentage of carbohydrates. So I'm curious about all that, if that makes you show more balance of your blood sugar, if you tested that, if you ate right for your metabolic type. So try the mtdiet.com for, I think it's about $75 to take their test, and look at 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, get your raw data, upload it into a program as DNAFit and Strategene, or the program Dr. Rosenberg talks about in our recent podcast with him on his book, The Real Genius, or Your Body Genius. Where is it? I put all my books on my shelf. I can't find it, but look it up. It's always on sale too for Ancestry DNA, the genetic testing, everything's on sale. Christmas time, the holiday season is here. So my long-winded 20-minute podcast has gone to almost 30 minutes. I'm going to end it here and then continue on and bring my friend Shanna next time, talk about metabolic typing diet, how it all works. And she's a metabolic typing coach, and she'll explain it more than myself. So stay tuned in by subscribing to the podcast, The Whole Athlete, on iTunes. If you like what you're listening to, I would ask for your help, please. Holiday gift is to share the podcast with other people and give us a review so we show up on the health and fitness and triathlon podcast listings around the world. And go to debbiepotts.net to get all your free gifts. I'm writing all this stuff to help educate you and help share the knowledge I'm gaining as I learn more being FDN practitioner and all this other programs and workshops I keep taking. And as I study one thing, I start going down a rabbit hole looking into something else. So I'm just curious about the whole chronic stress and mitochondria function and individualized coaching for each person to burn fat, optimize your health by working on the mitochondria function, your vagal tone, your genetic markers, and then hopefully that all helps our performance and longevity. All right, guys, do something that makes you laugh today and just Go smile and say hello to someone you don't know. Or when you pass someone you're running or going for a walk, say, hi, how are you today? Or just do something and get out of your comfort zone and make someone else smile and pay it forward. Okay, enjoy the day. Make it the best one ever and enjoy your evening. Get some sleep. All right, over now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.